funding in place and by putting these sites on a trajectory to recovery, we feel confident in making this legislative intervention.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I must say I find it quite extraordinary that the Minister can stand there and make that statement with a straight face.
It's probably her only face, if I'm honest, Caroline, but anyway. She was granted an urgent question in the House of Commons yesterday to ask the Secretary of State for levelling up housing and communities. That would probably have been Michael Gove. But anyway, she got Rachel Maclean. And if he would make a statement, or she would, on the government's decision to use the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill to scrap environmental protections on nutrient neutrality. And as you can tell, our only Green MP, she didn't hold back.
Mr Speaker, the Secretary of State for Levelling Up tabled a written ministerial statement yesterday on the government's plans, but I'm happy to provide an update to the House. In proposing these amendments, we're responding to calls from local...
Sir, it's very good of you to offer to do that update. I decided it was an urgent question. I expect ministers to come, so I didn't think a written ministerial statement was the way to inform the House. Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm delighted to be here to answer this urgent question. In proposing these amendments, we're responding to calls from local councils who want the government to take action to allow them to deliver the homes their communities need. At present, legacy EU laws on nutrient neutrality are blocking the delivery of new homes, including cases where planning permission has already been granted. This has affected home building of all types, from the redevelopment of empty spaces above high street shops to affordable housing schemes to new care homes and families building their own home. The block on building is hampering local economies and threatening to put SME local builders out of business. Nutrients entering our rivers are a real problem, but the contribution made by new homes is very small compared with that from other sources, such as industry, agriculture, and our existing housing stock. And the judgment so far has done very little to achieve and to improve water quality. We are already taking action across government to mandate water companies to improve their wastewater treatment works to the highest technically achievable limits. Those provisions alone will more than offset the nutrients expected from new housing developments. But we need to go further, faster, which is why, as well as proposing targeted amendments to the habitats regulations, the government is committing to a package of environmental measures. Central to this is £280 million of funding to Natural England to deliver strategic mitigation which is sufficient to offset the very small amount of additional nutrient discharge attributable to up to 100,000 homes between now and 2030. And we've also announced more than £200 million for slurry management and agricultural innovation in nutrient management and a commitment to accelerate protected site strategies in the most affected catchments. In our overall approach, there will be no loss of environmental outcomes, and we're confident our package of measures will improve the environment. Nutrient neutrality, Mr Speaker, was only ever an interim solution. With funding in place and by putting these sites on a trajectory to recovery, we feel confident in making this legislative intervention.
Caroline Lucas.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And I must say I find it quite extraordinary that the Minister can stand there and make that statement with a straight face. Over the past 8 years, ministers have stood at that dispatch box and promised time and again that leaving the European Union would not lead to a weakening of environmental standards. Those of us who raised our concerns have been repeatedly told that we were scaremongering. As recently as the 12th of June, the Solicitor General said we will not lower environmental protections in relation to the retained EU Law Act. Yet here we have it. Proposals to unpick the Habitats Directive and disapply the nutrient neutrality rules which protect our precious rivers and sensitive ecosystems. Proposals which the Office for Environmental Protection itself has made clear would, and I quote, demonstrably reduce the level of environmental protection provided for in existing environmental laws. They are a regression, and I would just underline that to the Minister chuntering from his seat on the front bench. Proposals which go directly against the polluter pays principle by forcing the taxpayer rather than house builders to foot the bill in mitigating increased water pollution from house building in environmentally sensitive areas. And what is particularly infuriating is that, as the name suggests, The nutrient neutrality rules weren't even about improving our environment, they were simply about trying to prevent pollution from getting worse. So let me ask the Minister some important questions. On transparency, will the Government now follow the OEP's call for them to make a statement as required by Section 20.4 of the Environment Act, admitting that they can no longer say that the Levelling Up Bill would not reduce environmental protections in law? Will the Minister explain how the Government will meet its objectives for water quality and protected site condition when it is at the same time weakening environmental law? What advice did ministers receive from Natural England before these amendments were tabled? Will she explain why there's been a complete lack of consultation with environment groups? And will she also explain what consultation there was with house builders, whom we will have noticed are cock-a-hoop about the announcement and the subsequent boost to their share prices? Will she admit that it is a false choice to pit house building against environmental protection when there are successful projects underway to address nutrient pollution? Will the Government provide evidence to their unsubstantiated claim that 100,000 homes are being delayed as a consequence of these rules? And will she recognise that money which can easily be taken away at a later stage is not the same as a legal requirement to stop pollution getting into our rivers?
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Well, I thank the Honourable Lady for her long list of questions, and I'm very happy to respond to all of them in detail. Our approach, and I stand by what I said and what the Government has said, we stand by our pledges to the environment, and we do not accept, as she stated, that we will weaken our commitment to the environment at all. It is important to consider what we are talking about here, which is unblocking 100,000 homes, which add very, very little in terms of pollution. But our approach, to be very clear, means there will be no overall loss to environmental outcomes. The measures we are taking not only address the small, very small amount of nutrient runoff from new housing, but we are investing at the same time in the improvement of environmental outcomes. And we don't agree that this is regression on environmental standards. We're taking direct action to continue to protect the environment and make sure that housing can be brought forward in areas where people need it. She asked about engagement. Of course, ministers across government and myself and Secretary of State have had numerous meetings with all parties involved, and we have had meetings with environment groups as part of government business. And I think it's worth also the House noting the very significant steps that DEFRA colleagues are taking in terms of enforcement on the water companies. Since 2015, the Environment Agency have concluded 59 prosecutions against water and sewage companies, securing £150 million in fines, and the regulators have recently launched the largest criminal and civil investigations into water company sewage. We are taking action against water companies to protect our rivers, leave the environment in a better state than we found it, and build the houses, affordable houses, that the country so desperately needs, including in her constituency.
Caroline Lucas is brilliant, isn't she? And all I will say is she'll be a sad loss to the House of Commons when she leaves, won't she? Do you know what I saw when I watched that? I saw a fantastic MP who's passionate in what she believes in, totally over her briefs, knows exactly what she's talking about, rinsing an MP who, in my view, is completely out of her depth and just sounded incredibly arrogant. Why do I say that? Well, you'll have to watch the other video that I've uploaded today, and you can tell me if you agree, because she made herself look a right idiot. But what do you think? Do you think Caroline Lucas will be a sad loss when she leaves? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed the video and what Caroline Lucas did, give her a like. Also, if you're new to my channel and you enjoy stuff in the House of Commons or more often in select committee meetings, subscribe, what I'm going to do. And I shall bid you farewell and take care, my friends.